So guys, did you know that there's proof of God? I mean, I didn't. I assumed that you knew. But apparently there's a 20-minute long video that is definitely going to tell me that there's proof of God. The first piece of fan art we have today here is from Jakester390. Said, I'm mostly a YouTube watcher, but I decided to make some Game Boy Advance era Fire Emblem style sprites of Suris. So this included both a speaking sprite and a battling sprite. And since there's a battling sprite, I assume you can let me die in this game. Would that I could. Anyway, the next one we have here is from Pine Tree. Coin Suris. Ocean Countoy, Wolf the Coin, the Coin Panions. No. Stop. Every one of you who posts coins. It's time to quit. It's time to stop. Coins are done. Anywho's. As always, everyone, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future episode, the best way to do so is to drop into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, if you haven't already hit the subscribe button or the like button over on YouTube, maybe consider doing that. Maybe even check out my Patreon, or maybe even check out sponsored this video, Magic Spoon, using the coupon code that you can get on stream by hitting the spoon command that I have conveniently forgotten. There we go. Capital, all caps, Stream 1021. That's the coupon code, and there is a link in the description. There we go. I did it. I forgot that I was sponsored for half a quarter of a second, and then I fixed it. Anywho, let's go ahead and get over here, and let's see what this video has to say to us.
This video will show you why morals must come from God rather than any other source.
Okay.
And yes, that inevitably means we'll show why God must exist rather than not. Now, believe it or not, we're not necessarily trying to prove that God exists. We're simply going down a list of possible explanations for morality, looking through each of their claims, and seeing which one has the best evidence supporting them in an unbiased manner.
So he's not trying to prove God exists, but he's gonna go through all the motions that will eventually prove God exists. That's... what? It feels like at some point there was a conversation about how language works that just was not ascertained by this person. Let's go and take a listen.
So first we'll explain the surprising way morality works that 99% of people don't understand.
Oh my god, that's so clickbaity. That's so clickbaity. The surprising way that morality works. 99% of people don't know. You'll be so surprised at number 5.
Then we'll go through the 4 possible explanations for morality and why 3 of them fall horrendously short. And then we'll show how we know that God is the only possible explanation, which necessarily means that God must exist.
He's not trying to prove God exists. However...
So if you want to know how that's possible, make sure to watch to the end of the video. Let's get started.
Surprising way morality works, okay?
Morality is a code of conduct, a set of principles or laws that determine what people should or should not do. While some actions, like giving money to the poor or helping someone who's in need, are generally considered good moral acts, others, such as cheating at a card game or pushing a handicapped person down a flight of stairs, are clearly not okay. But where do these moral laws come from, and why do they exist? Well, one way to approach this is to look at other types of laws. For example, some cities and states have their own laws that come from the leaders and governors that issue them, and they exist to prevent bad behavior. If 2 cities or states disagree, which they often do, then the countries that govern them have the final word, telling them what laws they both have to adhere to. And
no, that's actually incorrect. There are laws that different cities across the country are able to enact that only work within the confines of their city or their district or even their state. We've already got a problem. This is not how laws work, especially not in the states where the actual law he's talking about is there are plenty of laws that are federally mandated, and then there are local laws and ordinances. Okay. Nakibri, thank you for 100 bits. My proof of absolute morality, Infect in Commander. Yeah, people who bring Infect in Commander are morally wrong.
This works in the opposite direction too. Neighborhoods have their own laws for what color they can paint their houses or what they can grow in their gardens, so long as the cities that govern them are okay with it. Parents of families set their own code of conduct for the rest of the household, and you can even go down to each individual person, who decides what they think is right or wrong for themselves. But is there something that tells all people how they should act, regardless of country, culture, or family? After all, some countries have laws that directly contradict others.
Don't you like the cropping here? Don't you like the awful cropping here? But no, there isn't a single thing that dictates what our morality should or should not be. This is why the collective idea of what is or isn't moral has been changing over time. And we can even witness this change just by looking at legal documentation from hundreds of years ago.
Such as cow slaughter being illegal in India, but more than allowed in America. And some governments can even enforce laws that are evil in and of themselves, such as the Nuremberg laws of Nazi Germany, which allowed Hitler to legally commit genocide.
Yeah.
And this would even apply to people living on different planets and galaxies, if we ever got that far. There's no reason to think that
I'm gonna speed him up, because this is taking a bit.
Earthlings shouldn't kill people, while Saturnians or Martians can. So how do we determine what's right when the highest levels of people disagree? And what is it that tells us that anybody's laws are evil, if ultimately there isn't anything that truly decides what's right and wrong? Is it even possible to know? Or is everything simply up to each group, region, and ultimately each person individually? Well, the only way we can know what's truly right for everybody is if there's something holding all countries and all people accountable, also known as a universally objective standard of morality.
So, no, not necessarily. People can disagree on what's right or wrong, but we can still, through this lovely thing called utilitarianism, decide that certain things are more or less beneficial in our society. That's a thing that we have the ability to do. It has nothing to do with a universally objective standard that everybody can point to, because literally just going, for instance, God exists, therefore laws. There's an A, B, C, D, and everything else in between one and the other that you still have to get to. I'm not saying God doesn't exist. I'm saying this is a really bad argument.
Here's why. Consider a pickup game of basketball. Since it's a casual game, the players decide to call their own fouls. But if one person says that some physical contact was a foul, and his opponent says that it wasn't a foul, how do we know who's right? Both players have equal say in the matter, and both people believe they're right, which means this is a subjective call. You can't say objectively what is right or wrong, unless an outside party, such as a referee, tells them what the right call is.
So he's going to try to say that morality doesn't work based on our individual agreements. It must work because somebody outside calls the shots. Okay, cool. When you can demonstrate that this person is outside calling the shots, we'll have a conversation. But until we get there, we're not having a whole lot of headway.
Well, just as the players in the game can't determine what is or isn't a foul, people in real life can't determine what is moral or immoral. Any moral laws we try to appoint can be equally counteracted by anyone else's opinions, thoughts, and feelings. And if that's true, then who's to say which culture or country or groups of people at all have the right idea versus the wrong one? That's why we need an outside party that governs moral laws for them to truly be objective. Now,
Here's the thing. We don't need laws to be objective. This is the funny thing. Everybody freaks out about if it's not objective, if it's not objective, if it's not objective. It doesn't matter if it's objective. None of that matters. Your need for it to be objective is just as subjective as anything else. I'm sorry. Whether or not you want something to be objective, whether you think it needs to be, doesn't matter. And the fact that your ability to comport yourself may be infringed by something being actually subjective or actually objective, if you might comport yourself differently, that's a you issue, individually. You're going to have to work that out with the rest of society. Have fun with that. Morality does not need to be objective in order for it to be a useful tool. That's all morality is at the end of the day. It's a socially constructed tool. Why do we have morality? Because Humans are a social species, and socially, we happen to work better with one another when we have a set of rules that we are all operating under. Now, can we all agree on those rules? Not all the time, but we don't have to all agree on those rules. Boy, howdy, it sure would be great if we could all agree that women should have the right to their own bodies. It would be great if we could all agree that all races are created equal, and race is a social construct that's really fucking dumb. Spoon. It would be great if we could all agree that trans people should have their rights and shouldn't have them infringed, and they should be allowed to live their life as they need to. It would be great if we could all agree that gay people should be able to get married. All of those things would be wonderful for us all to agree on. But the fact that I personally want these to be objective standards that everyone can agree on does not magically make them so. It doesn't make them need to be that way. I personally believe society operates better when we do these things because they maximize freedom for individuals. But my belief in that doesn't make it objective. I'm still going to hold to it. I still think it's entirely right.
Experts say that these moral laws are appointed to us through the process of evolution. We inherently feel these urges and instincts so that our species can continue to reproduce, survive, and increase in strength for as long as we possibly can. Others say that all people just know what is moral and what isn't. We don't have to be told what's moral because we all feel it. It's natural to get angry at someone trying to steal your wallet, and it's natural to want justice when you're treated unfairly. If everyone
No. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop interrupting. I'm going to let him continue for a little bit.
knows what's right or wrong, then we don't need to question it. Still, others say that moral laws don't exist. Just like casual basketball players, we're free to decide what's right and wrong, and we can live our lives however we want. And yet, there is one last option, which is that universally objective morality does exist. There's something that tells all cities, countries, and ultimately all people anywhere what is right and wrong, and you can either follow that moral law or not. Some say the cause of morality is a hyper-advanced computer AI that's running the simulation we live in. Some might say it's a super intelligent alien race, but others simply call it God. We will now go through each explanation and determine which is the most likely, starting with...
Sure, why not?
To reiterate this theory, some people say that humans have evolved to gain a sense of moral right and wrong because it helps our species survive. We are able to reproduce, expand, and live prosperously because these morals aid us in making the correct decision to better our lives. However, there are at least three major issues with this theory. The first is that many of evolution's principles directly contradict with the morality we have.
Which evolutionary principle contradicts our morality? Which one? Please tell me.
For example, if humans want to strengthen their gene pool and increase their chances of survival, then it might be better not to allow people with weak genes to reproduce.
Oh, we just went full eugenics. Oh, we went 100%, just dived right into eugenics. Oh, that's hilarious. All right. Let's explain this one real quick. We, as humans, evolved to be a social species because as a social species, our chances of survival are greater. This can be seen in several species of mammal in general. Many of them happen to be very social because by being social, it allows them to survive longer. After all, it's easier to survive in a pack, especially when, as human beings, we have slowly become weaker over the course of our evolution when you compare us to a lot of other great apes. But here's the thing. All evolution had to do was get us to the point of saying we are social. That's all it had to do. What individual laws we make with that, whether those benefit us or not, that's not an evolution thing. Humans are pattern-seeking individuals. We sometimes connect the dots wrong. The ability to be pattern-seeking individuals is what led us to survive as long as we have, but that pattern-seeking can easily put us in the wrong area. For example, the pattern-seeking part of our brain very quickly may say that the rustling in the bushes is actually a lion, a predator of some kind about to attack you. But then you realize you're at your house and the likelihood of that happening is low, and type 2 thinking happens and you realize, oh, actually, maybe I'm fine. That instinct to run away from the thing in the bush, that was going to happen no matter what because you, as a person, have that instinct, that type 1 thinking, that gut reaction. That's the thing that caused us to survive. Building society around stuff, that's the type 2 thinking. They are both essential for our survival. One can't be a Vulcan with pure logic, and one can't be a person who does nothing but feel their way through everything. Both of these people suck at operating in a society with one another. People always find somewhere in the middle. And because we always find somewhere in the middle, we usually end up getting shit wrong. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with getting shit wrong. But let's see if he goes anywhere besides, if evolution and morality were linked, then eugenics, maybe?
Preventing any handicapped or autistic people from reproducing would invariably make us stronger as a species, as we wouldn't be held back by quote-unquote defective or faulty genes. Not only would our genes produce more powerful
Okay, can I head this one off at the pass real quick? Not fucking autistic people, not allowing them to breed would not magically make human beings better. I have a question. Does anybody here know how many technological innovations have happened because of autistic people? Do you know that the neurodivergent ability to hyperfixate and develop incredibly ingrained special interests directly lead to technological innovation? Because most people would not go into those self-torturous fields without having a special interest in them or hyperfixating on them oftentimes. An autistic person running around trying to emulate the feeling of catching fucking bugs brought us Pokemon. Yeah, BitTorrent apparently also developed by somebody who was autistic. You have no idea how many people who are autistic have directly led to the innovations that have made your life better. Innovations in technology, innovations in medicine, innovations in several fucking fields that have done nothing but improve your life. Making our individual genes somehow stronger by rooting out the autism doesn't actually make society better. Moreover, did you know that as a society, having people who are born handicapped actually aids us too? It aids us a lot. You want me to explain how? Did you know that some people become handicapped not because they were born that way, but because of accidents, because of trauma, because of invariable amount of random things can cause somebody to become handicapped? So, having people in society that have been born handicapped and have had to make adaptations in their life provide very useful information and data that allows people who normally had a typical life and then became handicapped down the way, accommodations can be made for them infinitely quicker because we have a ton of data from people who were handicapped at birth with similar issues. People who are born without legs under the kneecaps, people who are born with various deficiencies, actively help society by providing data that helps other people when they develop those things later on in life. Said a lot of astronauts are, etc. dyslexic. Yeah, look, like, again, the idea that handicapped people and autistic people are somehow a drain on society when so many innovations in society have come directly from people who are handicapped and autistic. Do you know how many people would have gone into some type of sport but ended up finding themselves in a technical field or a data analytical field and have created shit tons of innovations for us because they were handicapped? They were actually limited from going into a field they would have preferred but would have been not as beneficial to society, and yet being handicapped allowed them, basically forced them to go into a field that benefited us as a whole. This is not unknown information. And I'm speaking purely utilitarianly. Like, every single thing I'm saying right now is heartless and cruel and cold and calculated because I am looking at people right now through the lens of only numbers. But it's because I'm looking at people through that lens that I know I'm fucking right. I'm not letting my emotions get in the way of this. I'm not letting any of my friends who may be on the spectrum in any way, shape, or form, I'm not letting them factor into the conversation. I am thinking about raw data. Raw data proves you fucking wrong. Stop.
offspring, but we also wouldn't have to spend extra resources taking care of these people, and could instead use it towards other advancements. On top of that, anyone who can't produce offspring, or anyone who refuses to, should be eliminated along with them. In fact,
No. Morality per evolution does not say we should eliminate all gay people. Nobody who knows even an ounce of philosophy believes that. No microbiologist who studies evolution as a job believes that. Whoever told you that did not have your best interests at heart.
Not only do you see this happen in nature all the time, but this is also exactly what Nazi Germany thought as well. The Nazis believed that they needed to be pure in order to be strong, so they forcibly sterilized or killed people with physical and mental disabilities, as well as alcoholics or incorrigible criminals. But no
Yeah, guess what? The Nazis were wrong. As I said, oftentimes as human beings, we find ourselves caught in the middle of that analytic side of the brain and that emotional side of the brain, and sometimes we come out fucking wrong. Who would have thought?
decent person considers these actions morally good, so it doesn't make sense to say that our morals came from principles like survival of the fittest and natural selection.
Wait.
Considers these actions morally good, so it doesn't make sense to say that our morals came from principles like survival of the fittest and natural.
Survival of the fittest and natural selection. So did you know that survival of the fittest has actually nothing to do with evolution? That actual statement isn't part of any conversation that a microbiologist ever fucking has. Survival of the fittest is nomenclature. It's a figure of speech. It means absolutely zero. What matters for evolution, yes, axolotls with cream. What matters for evolution is who fucks the most. And statistically, people who live longer get to fuck more. That's all. When somebody says evolution granted us morality, they're saying that evolution selected naturally, randomly in some cases, but in many cases, not quite as much. And it's not even natural. I'm going to get into the natural selection thing in a second. But evolution as a process got us to a point where we were working with one another as a species. Evolution as a process got us to the point where we could have sophisticated dialogue with one another. Having sophisticated dialogue with one another is what allows us to have conversations about right and wrong. It doesn't have to be me sitting here having food knocked out of my hand and me growling at you for you to know I didn't like that. We could have conversations previous to that because we are a social species. Evolution granted us the ability to have social species, and that's undeniably a scientific fact. Else, if you don't think we evolved with the ability to speak to one another, how the fuck are we here? Speaking to one another. As for the natural selection thing, let's go ahead and get that one out of the way right now. That one also doesn't fucking matter. So this whole, like, the giraffes got longer necks to eat the things, and then the giraffes that had the less long necks... No. So natural selection is not an actual edict. It is not a philosophical mandate within evolution. It's literally, if 5 puppies are born in the tundra to a wolf, and yes, it's also a bad representation of evolution because it looks like fucking Lamarckian's and Aristotle's ladder of evolution. But so if 5 wolves are born in the tundra and one of them has incredibly short hair, their likelihood of survival is a lot lower. It's a lot lower. It's not zero, but it's a lot lower. Now, there's 2 ways this wolf might survive to breed. Way 1 is by having a bigger coat. Bendy says, I don't understand. What do you not understand? Because I'm completely willing to break anything down if I need to. In the meantime, if that one wolf that is trying desperately to survive huddles into its mate until it gets larger and can fend for itself better, then socially it has adapted. Whereas every other wolf there was already predisposed and adapted to the climate. One of the wolves has to be a lot more social in order to grow large enough to breed. And then more wolves from that one baby cub may end up breeding as it gets older, and they all end up having shorter hair. These wolves, who breed and have shorter hair, will naturally, to survive, have to become more social with one another because they are going to have to get closer and bundle up and operate much more closely like a pack. natural selection might not actually select for the wolves that are working on their lonesome as often, but have the coats to survive the winter. Natural selection, quote unquote, may end up selecting the more social wolves because they are less likely to be threatened by other predators, because they, to survive, have to bundle up for warmth more often, meaning that they are in tighter knit packs more often, huddling for warmth. Natural selection is almost random in how it operates. It's not a moral principle, it's just a thing we observe. To say that a moral principle gets knocked out because we observe a thing in nature doesn't make any sense. Bendy says the picture. That's fair. The picture's stupid.
Natural selection. And the opposite is true as well. Many actions that people consider to be morally good are actions that lower your chance of survival. When the hero of a movie sacrifices themselves for a random person, people think that's great and honorable, even though it would be better for society if the powerful, smart, and capable hero survived instead.
Are you really showing this scene for this? This is your win? This is your W? This idiot? Star-Lord getting himself cucked? That's your... Okay, anyway. So, because something works one way in a story, and because something works one way elsewhere, you know that, like, somebody surviving in a story is just the author's intent, right? The author could have written it any way they fucking want. That doesn't mean anything for you. That doesn't mean jack. Oh, but okay, let's continue.
Now, to combat this, people will say that evolution may have started off doing things like weeding out the handicapped and the weak, but over time, it realized that keeping as many people alive as possible was more beneficial. So we evolved to want to do the things that may have initially seemed detrimental.
Here's a problem. Evolution doesn't realize anything. Evolution doesn't have cognizance. Evolution can't think. What? What?
First glance, this might seem like a reasonable explanation.
No,
but
it's
ultimately,
not!
no reputable evolutionists are willing to use this argument.
Evolution? Oh my god. Oh my god, okay. Do we have a yek? Do we have a yek here?
This is because the very basis of evolution is the brutal and bloody process of killing to increase chances of survival.
No? What? Who? What? What? Who the fuck says that?
And suggesting that this produced the idea that we should not do those things is pretty contradictory. But just for fun, let's say that this explanation was possible. Well, this brings us to our second point, which is that since evolution is a process of change, morals also change with it. That means that morals are not universally objective, but rather subjective.
Yeah, and that's fine. Morals can be entirely subjective. Nobody cares. I don't care. Do you guys remember years ago when I used to use much more technical language when talking about morality? Do you remember that? Do you want to know why I stopped? I stopped caring. It could have been that moral philosophy was a hyperfixation of mine, and as I've become more cognizant of how politics work, I've stopped caring as much about the technical language where morality is concerned. But realistically, it's because I realized that, like, these arguments, these are fun to have, but they don't mean shit. Also, it made you sound a bit pretentious. Yeah. I probably sounded a lot more like an asshole back then. To be fair, I still am an asshole. Like, morality changing, that's not a bad thing. People adapting as, you know, people, and having conversations with one another, and as a result, having a changing and shifting idea of what is good and bad, that's not a bug. That's a feature of a social species.
As depending on factors such as genes, societal and cultural influences, geographical location, and time period, evolution can produce wildly different moral values. So the one thing that's supposed to explain where our universally objective morals come from ends up contradicting itself.
We don't have universally objective morals, though. You would need to find evidence of universally objective morals,
as it produces moral laws and values that directly contradict each other. And yet, our third point is even more compelling. Keep in mind that, by definition,
none of these points have been compelling. Please find one.
Free will is needed to make moral choices. After all,
I wonder. Does he... So, y'all know that I don't believe in free will, right? Y'all know that, right? I sincerely hope some of you have caught on in some of the videos that I've done that I do not believe in free will. I am a person who believes that we, as people, have a wonderful illusion of free will. But the fact that almost everything you do is done in your subconscious before you ever even think about it means that you, as an individual, have a lot less control over your body and your actions than you think. As far as I'm concerned, one of my favorite examples of this, to point out that your subconscious is in control of a lot of stuff you don't realize until you think about it, you're now breathing manually. You're also now blinking manually. Have fun. Anyways, continue.
Something like a computer program can't choose to do something good or something bad, it just follows whatever programming it has been given without thinking. In fact, anything we don't have control over isn't our fault. If you're on the freeway and someone else makes a sudden turn and slams into you, the fact that this crash may also endanger other cars doesn't mean that you've done something morally wrong. As long as you've done all you can to drive safely, then you're not responsible for factors outside your control. The problem is...
Did you know that responsibility is not a factor in whether or not an action was morally good or not? You know that there's actually several different moral principles that one can utilize that mean that responsibility and culpability have nothing to do with whether an action is right or wrong. Rule utilitarianism actually argues that responsibility doesn't fucking matter. All that matters is end results. This is why rule utilitarians will typically have very quick and easy answers to trolley problems when presented with them. Whereas people who have more, say, libertarian philosophies will find themselves not answering the trolley problem at all. They will end up looking at a trolley problem and going, well, the moral decision is to not touch the thing that's going to cause the train to go one way or the other, because then you're morally clean. A utilitarian will go, you had a responsibility to lower the amount of deaths. You had a responsibility to increase the net good in the world. Who the fuck said that you could just not choose? Suris is bright as fuck, because it's a bright screen!
Is, according to evolution, none of us have free will. If you haven't heard of that already, you don't have to take our word for it. Many of the world's smartest and most renowned scientists and scholars have already written books, articles, and published studies on this topic.
Yeah, I subscribe to this as well. I subscribe to the idea that free will is an illusion. I find that it is useful, though, because I am very utilitarian. I do find that it is useful for people to operate as if they have free will. Because when we operate as if we have free will, net suffering in the world goes down. If we operate as if we don't have free will and everybody goes, I'm absolved of all responsibility, my subconscious dictated everything I did, if I chop off your wiener, that's not my problem, it's the spooky thing in my brain. Like, no. That does not create a society where people are happier or people are better off. Generally speaking, people are happier and better off when we operate as if we do have culpability, responsibility, and free will, even if these things are all illusion. Doesn't matter.
They say that, just as a computer program has no choice to obey its code, humans have no choice but to obey their DNA. According to these people, nothing is really anyone's fault, and any feelings we have on the matter are just illusions. Getting upset at someone else's actions is nonsensical, it's irrelevant whether we lie to get promoted in our careers or earnestly work hard. There's nothing that we can do that has any meaning at all.
No, again, one can take the idea that we do not have free will and also understand that it is incredibly useful to operate as if we do, and then still understand also that holding people responsible for their actions is still a useful thing to do because it produces better results. Again, this is why I'm a fucking moral anti-realist. I find that every single argument for morality is fucking dumb, stupid, and wrong.
Are just another species of animal, maybe slightly more advanced, but still slaves to basic survival instincts, as trillions of electrical signals tell us to do whatever it takes to survive on this insignificant speck in the universe. Real quick though, this channel does not actively discredit evolution as a whole, we're just saying that it doesn't do a good job of explaining where morality comes from.
Again, evolution, all evolution does is explain that we developed as a social species, and as we developed as a social species, it was likely more useful for us to socialize with one another, and socializing with one another naturally means that we will find ourselves both at odds and in agreement when it comes to certain moral principles that we do or don't follow. As a result, we tend to start codifying the things that we do or don't agree with so that we can operate better. You may not agree that murder's wrong. I may think that murder's wrong, but we can both agree that people living is probably better than not. So even if you want to murder people you don't like, we might both agree maybe it's a good idea to put a law there that says that you can't or shouldn't do that or punishment happens.
For further clarification, you'll have to wait for a future video we're working on, so make sure you don't miss that. With that said, let's move on to the next explanation. Some state that since we all generally agree on what the objective moral laws are, that we should just follow them without needing to know why they're there. After all, that's just how things are, and no one disagrees with it, so there's no point worrying about it. First,
I don't think anybody says that one either. I've maybe heard like one or two people say that like it's all common sense, don't you know? And I just don't find that compelling.
First of all, this is circular reasoning, which is a common logical fallacy, so it doesn't actually make sense. Second, the very same people that propose this explanation don't believe we should think this way about anything else in life. Nobody says, hey, we all know the moon exists, and nobody disagrees, so there's no use trying to figure out where it comes from. In fact, it's...
Wait, what? No, that's not what that means. No. You and I both believe the moon exists, right? Cool. Nobody disagrees? Cool. You know what that means? We don't need to have a conversation about the moon existing. That's as far as that goes. We agree the moon exists, so we don't have to fucking fight about it. Where it comes from is another question. Why it's there is another different question. Us agreeing on why it's there might lead us to not try to figure out why it's there, because then we'd be categorically in the exact same place in our conversation. But if we're just agreeing that the moon exists, that doesn't mean we exist. We agree on why it's there. That doesn't mean we exist. We agree on how it got there.
Quite the opposite. Because we all know it exists, it compels us to learn more about it, how it works, where it comes from, and why it's there. This curiosity not only helps us make huge leaps forward in science and helps us better understand the universe we live in, but also staying willfully ignorant would just be utterly unscientific. And third,
you're right, which is why almost nobody operates the way you just described.
This is extremely worth looking into, maybe one of the most important things to look into in the entire universe. There are life-changing consequences, as the way that you live your life, the things that you stand for, and the way that you view the world depend on where the source of morality comes from. But even...
No, it really doesn't. There are people who go their entire lives living incredibly happy and prosperous ones without ever considering these deeper problems, because it just doesn't matter to them. Not everybody has to be a philosophy nut. My hyperfixation does not need to be your hyperfixation, unless that's Magic the Gathering, in which case, yes, it does, and you need to come to Commander Night on Thursdays, which happens to be tomorrow, which is at the time of recording this video, not the time the video actually goes out. I'm just saying play card games with me. But don't, bring multi-land destruction, infect, multiple turns, or any of that degenerate shit. Or, 2-card... infinite combos, things like that. It's a casual night. There are people coming here with precons. It's okay. But, anywho, he's about to say atheists are all nihilists. Oh, he's already done that. So someone should bring all of that. Sakura, if somebody brings all of that, then I am going to go grab Raz's Joyra deck. And I'm just going to play a game of solitaire where nobody gets to have fun. Absolutely nobody. My opening turn is going to be land, Soul Ring, Mana Rock, Mana Rock, Mana Rock, and then if nobody wipes all of those off the board, I win. And I'm sorry, but that's just going to be a you problem because you decided to bring bullshit. Would you be willing to help me build a Sliver Commander deck? Absolutely fucking not. I've only done that once, and I'm never making that mistake again. And how dare you ask me?
Even more than that, there are eternal consequences. If God really is the source of morality, then this 80-year life is only a blip compared to the trillions, quintillions, and octillions of years of potential joy and happiness. It's dire, crucial, and imperative that we try to find out if God exists, not just...
No, it's really not. Again, there are people who can go their entire lives without considering this, and it doesn't matter. You can have a very fulfilling life, even if this life is the only one here. Pascal's wager doesn't fucking matter.
For this life, but for all of eternity. And honestly, that's all that really needs to be said about this one. There are many reputable scientists that agree that evolution fails to explain human morality. And of course...
Yeah, because evolution doesn't explain human morality, it just explains why we, as a species, would have had the compunction to create it. Like that's what it does.
Ignoring the problem makes no sense either. So at this point, there's only one last option for people trying to avoid turning to God, and that's just to say that objective morality doesn't exist at all. After all, nothing in our world can logically explain it, so it must not really exist. Oftentimes you'll hear this presented with statements such as, people should be free to decide the truth for themselves, meaning that whatever works for them and is making them happy is totally fine. Nothing is truly right or wrong, and in fact it would be ignorant of us to impose our thoughts and feelings upon others. Now this is a phrase we wholeheartedly want to agree with, as that type of open-mindedness and inclusiveness is necessary to make meaningful progress during big philosophical discussions like this one. But if that line of thought is true, then nobody should be getting mad at other people for doing, well, basically anything. Did I just steal your wallet? Well, according to my beliefs,
No, that's not how this works. Okay, so if I believe that I should be able to do anything, and you believe that you should be able to do anything, those beliefs necessarily stop at each other. Like, our consent is where it stops. That's where it ends. So if you say, I should be able to steal whatever I want, and I go, okay, and then you come for my wallet, I'm going to say no. Because your freedom ends where my fist begins. And it may even be that if you steal from me, my fist may begin something and I don't know when it's going to stop. But you created that world for yourself, so, you know, have fun with that. The point is, it's a democracy, anybody? We can agree on shit via majority. Why are you so overexposed? Because it is a white video. And as soon as the video is not white, it will be less so. But again, everybody agreeing that they should be allowed to do anything they want naturally becomes a contradiction. So we all have to have that secondary belief of, as it extends to my body, I should be able to do anything when it comes to my body.
that's not wrong at all. Maybe I believe in survival of the fittest, maybe I believe in just doing whatever makes me happy, or maybe I believe that you're a bad person and that taking your wallet is punishment for doing bad things. Countries that don't allow women to vote or say that they're not as valuable as men aren't actually wrong, they just have different opinions. And if someone...
No, because again, you having the opinion that a woman should not be allowed to vote is now extending into her rights. Again, my rights end where your rights begin. Your rights end where my rights begin. So if you are having the opinion that a woman shouldn't be able to vote, then your rights end where her right to vote begins. This is only contradictory to you if you ignore everything else. Why is your avatar lighting depending on the video? Because I am trying out a new system of dynamic lighting that will have my character's lighting react to whatever I happen to be watching at the time. And I think that's somewhat neat. At least to a degree. I don't know, I like it.
thinks sexual freedom is the most important thing to them, and thus goes and abuses or rapes whoever they choose, then that's the truth they've decided for themselves.
No, sexual freedom... Okay, so if you say sexual freedom is good, and then you violate the sexual freedom of someone else, you don't actually think sexual freedom is good or even good for you. You just want to violate someone else. I'm sorry. This moral principle that you're trying to use, when you use only half of it, of course, it's contradictory. But when you use the other half of it, it stops being so. Weird how that works.
And there's nothing anyone can say about it. If you believe that morality doesn't actually exist, then you can't say things like, hey, you can't do that, or people shouldn't do these things, or that's not fair.
So here's the thing. You can't do that because people shouldn't do X because that's not fair because if you use only half the statement, then yeah, sounds dumb. But if I can give a logical reason why you shouldn't do that, or people shouldn't do this, or it's not fair to do this, that's different.
Because if you do say that, then what you're really saying is that no human should do these things regardless of their beliefs.
Correct. Again, that is not a bug. That is a feature.
Which is exactly what universally objective morality is.
No. So here's the thing. Not only universal objective morality explains that, there's a lot of things that can explain that, like, oh, I don't know, it just being particularly utilitarian and operating that way. Dark Armor Zero, thank you for the follow.
Now, saying that heinous acts aren't objectively wrong is a pretty bold and uncomfortable statement that makes this view pretty antagonizing. So to soften it up, some people will say that while there isn't really objective universal morality, we're still allowed to disagree with each other. This allows them to say they dislike evil acts like murder, stealing, and abuse, just like everybody else, but they also still don't have to admit that morality is objective.
It's amazing how omitting important parts of moral discussion allow people to take whatever stance they want. People talking about morality and religion be philosophically illiterate challenge.
And universal. For this, we can look to things like our opinions on music, movies, or TV shows as a good example. Creative media and entertainment doesn't have any universally objective measure of truth. It's all just subjective, based on our own opinions. But yet, we disagree all the time. People even get pretty heated about artists and movies and the like. Can't this also be how morality works? The problem.
Yeah. But when people's lives actually hang in the balance. Said, if I ignore your argument, it makes no sense, so I'm right. Okay, us disagreeing on things does not mean that we cannot still create a moral system. We do this all the time through this lovely thing called compromise. It's a feature, not a bug of communication.
Problem with this is that while people can quite fervently defend their opinions, nobody is saying that anyone who disagrees with them needs to go to prison. We're not lobbying or protesting that anyone who dislikes Star Wars has to pay a fine, or people who think that Parasite shouldn't have won Best Picture need to do time for 10 years. We might say that people who like vanilla ice cream more than chocolate have awful taste, but nothing is actually objectively wrong with liking vanilla.
No, actually, something is objectively wrong with that. If you happen to like vanilla over chocolate, then you're actually a terrorist, and I can't really name all of the human rights that you deserve to have stripped from you, but it's at least 3.
It's inherently understood that these subjective preferences are not that big of a deal. But of course, with tragic things like kidnapping and homicide, we do think these things are a big deal. In fact, you don't even have to do those acts to still be punished for them by law. For example, any action that intends to take money from a bank can result in years in prison, even if you don't actually take a single dollar. This shows just how differently people react to serious moral issues compared to subjective opinions. Lastly, the very people who believe that morality doesn't exist can't help but take strong moral stances themselves. One example of this is Richard Dawkins, an acclaimed evolutionary biologist and author at the University of Oxford. And whether you know of him or not, he has profoundly shaped modern beliefs on morality. Dawkins himself has said in his book, "We are survival machines, robot vehicles blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes." This is a truth which still fills me with astonishment. But in that very same book, he also says, let us try to teach generosity and altruism because we are born selfish. So on one hand, Dawkins claims that morality...
Wait, those are completely non-contradictory statements. What? Look, I don't like Dawkins. I find him to be kind of a repugnant individual. But those are not contradictory statements. You know what? Actually, hold on. Star Raptor, Mass Creationist Broadcast, one of you two. I need somebody who is known for disagreeing with me. Please tell me I'm wrong when I say that those are not contradictory statements. Am I incorrect there? I need somebody who I know is not going to be a yes man here. So, we are survival machines. We blindly perform actions that preserve ourselves. And then the statement
also says, let us try to
teach generosity because we're born selfish. Is it just me, or does that statement take into account the previous one as part of its argument? Delantram says, is that famous painter Luca Tim? Probably not. Probably not. Said, I don't think it's just you. I'm hoping that it's not just me being blindly contrarian to a video that's saying a bunch of things I disagree with. I'm hoping that. But still, says there's nothing wrong with that combination. Okay, cool. This is like the worst measurement device I can possibly have for this, but...
to teach generosity and altruism because we are born selfish. So on one hand, Dawkins claims that morality doesn't actually exist in our world, but yet on the other hand, he's a strong advocate for morality at the very same time.
Yeah, he says, fucking,
Dawkins
look at
claims
this,
that morality
look
doesn't
at this.
actually exist in our world, but yet on the other hand, he's a strong advocate for morality at the very same.
Morality does not exist in the world. We are born selfish. It is more useful to us to operate in a different fashion than that. The world sucks. Let's make it better. Everett GA, thank you very much for the resubscription. These aren't contradictory claims.
Time. Not only that, but he even gives his own version of the 10 Commandments for guiding moral behavior. He strongly proposes his own moral standards on all of humanity, which means that he believes in universally objective morality.
No, he doesn't. I guarantee you in that statement, he would believe that his own thing... he just believes that his own standards are good and better than others. That's what he believes. Does he think they're universally objective standards? Probably fucking not.
And he's not the only one who does this. There are many examples of renowned scientists, scholars, and philosophers who say that there are no objective moral laws, but yet cannot help but act as if universally objective morality exists because it clearly does exist.
No, we act that way because it is useful. It benefits our survival. We have better lives when we act in cognizance of each other.
So, in the end, there is powerful and unavoidable empirical evidence that universally objective morality exists. It's something that we're all well aware of, something we all experience and see on a daily basis, and something we cannot ignore no matter how hard we try.
You didn't provide any evidence, though. You just said that some famous people say some contradictory things. That was your evidence.
So, the only option left is that a free-thinking being that exists outside the confines of our universe
What?
must have created moral laws and imbued us with the innate knowledge of them.
What? Wait, what? How is
That exists outside the confines of our universe must have created moral laws and imbued us with the innate knowledge of them.
How is that the go-to? How is that the go-to? Wait, how did we get there? How did we get there? What? Wait. I want to know who does your gym routines. Where did that leap come from?
At this point, you might be thinking, hold up, just because these other explanations don't work doesn't mean there couldn't be another explanation out there. But in reality, any explanation can only fall into three categories. 1, morality is explained by natural causes inside our universe. 2, morality is explained by causes outside our universe. Or 3, morality doesn't exist. And I guess a fourth category would just be to ignore the problem entirely. Category 4 is clearly irresponsible and thoughtless. And category 3 has all of humanity's empirical evidence going against it.
Again, we don't have evidence of objective morality existing. We just have evidence that humans operate as if morality exists. It's not the same thing.
For category 1, you might think the only explanations we covered were evolution and sociocultural influences, but remember that to have an objective standard of morality, you need to have an outside party. So it's not just that these explanations can't explain objective morality, but any explanation that doesn't allow for an outside party can't explain objective morality.
So here's the thing. What he's basically saying is that step 1, do stretches. Step 2, deadlift 500 pounds. What he's saying is objective morality exists. We all know it, and it only can exist if we have a god. I'm saying objective morality doesn't necessarily exist. And objective morality existing, does anybody know that objective morality? I know he's saying universally objective morality. But objective morality by itself just means that there is an object. There is a thing to point to. If somebody believes in the morality of the Bible, they believe in an objective morality. There is a thing they point to for their philosophy. Something does not need to be universally objective. We can have several, even sometimes contradictory, objective standards of morality that we point to, because it's useful for human beings to have that. These shorthands that allow us to operate with one another better, these are things that we can have.
It just so happens that these two are the most common ways that people try to explain morality, so those were the two that we addressed. As for category 2, consider the multitude of validity tests that it passes. It explains morality with high accuracy and precision, and even offers greater predictive power. Because if God exists, then something like the Bible or another religious text can objectively tell us what else falls in line with our moral experience.
No, a God existing does not mean that the religious text written about them is accurate. What? That does not follow either.
It has never been proven false or found to have any contradictions.
My guy, you have to necessarily believe slavery is a good thing. If we're using the Bible for our morality, you believe slavery is good. You have to. The Bible advocates for it. Jesus specifically says slaves should obey their masters. What? Also, the Bible's never been proven false? My guy, global flood. When did it happen? How did it happen? Where did it happen?
It explains not
There is 3 minutes left in this video.
just one, but many aspects of morality, including where morals come from, why morals exist in the first place, why people across different regions and cultures still share similar moral instincts, and more. Whereas other hypotheses explain none. It's in line with other accepted beliefs and doesn't appeal to authority. While other theories suggest that the evidence for morality is just an illusion, category 2 agrees that our experience is valid and that we inherently have fundamental ideas of right and wrong.
Yeah, we inherently have fundamental ideas of right and wrong. Sometimes. Not all the time. And they don't always line up.
It doesn't make assumptions or require extra unknown information. Over 55% of the world already believes in either Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, so a monotheistic God is not new information for the majority of the world's population.
That doesn't matter. That's argumentum ad populum. Who the fuck cares?
And finally, it fares better than other rival hypotheses, as all other theories either have glaring flaws or have just been completely discredited by contemporary wisdom.
Have you considered that yours also has those flaws? What is your God considered good? Do you know? Can you know? Whether your God even exists, does it even matter? What about deists? deists can believe that all that shit was planted in us and then the god fucked off and went to go get milk and cigarettes.
No other theory does as well as Category 2. So, although one might at first think God's existence is unbelievable, an unbiased, rational person looking at the evidence would have more reason to believe that God is the true cause of morality than anything else.
You have not demonstrated that in this video. And that's as much time as I'm willing to give to you. What is the last one? God versus multiverse theory? What is the fucking multiverse? Why does multiverse theory matter? That doesn't... I don't care about... You know what? That's a different video. If I go back to this video, we will just be covering the God multiverse thing here. I'm ignoring all those friend requests, Fortnite. Go away. Anyways, that was boring. That was awful. Hi, guys. How are you doing? I don't know. If I missed anything, let me know. Something Magic Spoon sponsorship. Something comments, like button, brain fry, insert end video tagline here. I'm gonna go on to the next topic. Insert butthole.